Are you trying to make money in the sports card hobby? A lot of us are. In this video, I'm going to go through a few different strategies that I've found to be the most beneficial to try to make money with sports cards. Let's get into this. All right, so before we start talking about some of the things that will make you money, let's first mention a few of the big things that will make you lose money. They're fun, but they're not strategies for making money. The biggest one, of course, is ripping wax. Now, of course, everybody says there has to be people who are gonna rip wax or else there's no cards on the market. That's absolutely true. It just doesn't have to be you. Ripping wax is a fun thing. Some people do it out of nostalgia because they love the experience as a kid. Some people do it out of the dopamine rush of gambling and they just want to hit that card. You know, there's different reasons why people might choose to open a pack, but if your reason is to try to make money, that is not going to work. Very likely you're going to get 10% ROI. If your goal is to have fun, if your goal is to just build your collection that way, if your goal is to have some experience to share with your friends or with your kids or whatever, that's totally good motivations. But if your goal is to make money, that is absolutely the wrong way to go about doing it. Another thing that I think is not a good way to go about trying to make money is prospecting. Now, what is prospecting? Buying cards of young players, waiting for their hype to hit, and then selling, thinking that they're going to be a great player. Now, prospecting can be a fun game. A lot of people do make money in this space, but it's not reliable. When I'm thinking about making money in the sports card hobby, I don't want to have it based on such a game of chance. I mean, you could spend a whole bunch of money around some player and they have one injury, they have one issue with the law, which seems to be happening a growing amount of times, and their cards lose value. Or they could be a perfectly great player, but just be in a situation where they're not hyped up and their cards will lose money. Almost any prospect, 95% of the prospects, their cards will eventually go down in value. There will be a few rare ones, and that's what keeps people more and more interested in this space. I mean, if you had bought up a bunch of Giannis cards or Jokic cards when they were rookies, of course, they would have gone up a lot from that time. But a lot of other players haven't, even players that you would think would. I mean, Embiid, for example, he was just the MVP. You would think that his cards probably would have increased in value significantly. They really haven't. I've bought just recently a rookie patch card, game used patch, for $25 of Joel Embiid. He's turned out to be an MVP caliber player. So the game of prospecting is a hard one to win, even if you feel you have a lot of knowledge in that sport. I still play this game every once in a while. If there's a few players where their cards are really low, like during the rookie season of Tyrese Halliburton and Tyrese Maxey, the Tyreses, I was buying up a lot of those two players' cards because I just saw a lot of potential. I was avoiding LaMelo Ball like crazy because his hype was so high. I realized early on that if LaMelo Ball's cards had that much hype, he could end up being a perennial all-star. He could be a future Hall of Famer, and his cards would still go down in value over time. I did really like Tyrese Maxey and Tyrese Halliburton right out of the gate, and I was buying up a bunch of their cards, and then whenever I found times to sell, I was making money. So it is possible, but those two guys are the exception to the rule. You know, I was also buying up some cards of who were some other players. I bought a decent amount of Patrick Williams, Desmond Bane even. I bought a bunch of Desmond Bane, and he's doing great. His cards don't have that much value despite the fact he's doing great. He just hasn't hit the hype cycle like the Tyreses have. But a little bit of even Isaac Okoro, a few things, and none of those guys' cards went up at all. You know, a lot of people will talk about baseball is the place to do prospecting, and there is something to be said about it. You do have a little bit more, you can see more. You can see as they're in single A, as they move up to double A, you have a larger data pool to work from. You can get a better sense of what they might be able to do in the majors, but at the same time, you don't know what's going to happen. It's the journey of a professional player is never linear. Certain players pop off that you don't expect to. Certain players end up, not doing very well. And I would say with that, a lot of it is you just don't want to buy into the hype. That's the key with it. But in general, the prospect game is just a risky space. I mean, you can really see it with NFL quarterbacks. I don't follow the NFL that closely, but I do follow the sports card market, and it is amazing to me. Every single year, it repeats, rinse and repeats. Some rookie, whoever it might be, insert Mac Jones, insert Desmond Ridder, insert Kenny Pickett, whatever, CJ Stroud maybe is going to be the newest one, who knows? But whatever rookie you mention, there's some point where they are the best ever. They're their cards go like this, and then they tank. And they end up being nothing. The change that's happened with a Mac Jones card is just absolute insanity. Donruss rated rookie going for thousands to going for like maybe not even $10, you know, a 98%, 99% decrease in value on some of these young quarterbacks that were prospected really highly. It makes for a wild space. I don't think prospecting is a reliable way to make money. You can sometimes, but it's not reliable. Now, what about ways that are possible? What are some of the actual best ways to make money in the hobby? I'm not an expert, but there are a few ways I've been doing it that have been working well. Number one, I'm just going to call this marketplace arbitrage. This is, I think, the easiest way. If you buy only on eBay and sell only on eBay, the market value is already set. You know what it's going to be. Everybody who's selling on eBay is probably looking on the comp before they put it on eBay. But if somebody is selling in a different marketplace, they're not necessarily following the same patterns all the time. You know, I buy a lot of my cards in the card hobby space, which is actually China's main domestic sports card marketplace. And you can buy, I've made videos about how you can buy cards from there. And the market is different. The forces of supply and demand are different in that domestic market, so the values are different. Certain cards that are not worth as much in the US are worth more there, and vice versa. So if you become aware of some of those things, you can go in and you can buy things in one marketplace, ship them to yourself, put it in a different marketplace. You don't have to worry as much about the forces of market change if this card goes up or down. If you're already buying a card at 50% of the comp, then even if the card continues to go down from its current comp value, as long as you're able to sell it, you'll make some sort of profit in there. You don't have to worry so much about the market's changes and making your decisions based on that. I don't sell cards based on when I think it's the right season for cards to buy or sell. When I'm able to get cards for a good deal, I sell them right away. Maybe if I had waited to the beginning of that sports season or something, I could have made more, but I'm just trying to move things, you know, arbitrage from this marketplace to that marketplace. You know, that's the one I've found to be the most profitable for me personally. It's a little bit hard to figure it out and to learn it and things. I've made some videos that maybe give you a step in that direction. If you're interested, you can go to my channel under the playlist list. There's a section, I think it's called Sports Cards in China or something like that, or just look up card hobby when you search in my channel and you can find some of the videos I've made about it. But there's other spaces too. I mean, you could buy cards on buysportscards.com and try to sell them on eBay. You could buy cards on ComC and try to sell them on eBay. You could buy cards on eBay and try to sell them on ComC. I mean, there's different forces at play in some of the different marketplaces, and there's different spaces where you may be able to sell better. For example, I will never buy on eBay and then sell on eBay very often. I don't do that. The card I've just bought sets a comp, and if I'm trying to make money on that card, then I've just lowered the value on that good deal card that I just bought if I bought it on eBay. If I buy it somewhere else, it doesn't have that same effect. It's strange. I mean, it shouldn't be quite like that, but it's kind of the way that market value is determined nowadays. So it's not such a wise idea to buy from eBay and sell from eBay unless you're buying lots or something like that. It's so funny to think of it this way. The second one, and this one's a little bit more challenging. I mean, that one is challenging too, but this one's a little bit more risky, and that's buying bulk lots, maybe on Facebook Marketplace, on eBay, different places, buying large amounts of cards and selling them. Now, you have to be very careful with this one. There's a lot of people, especially on Facebook Marketplace, they're going to sell a whole ton of cards, and actually they've already gone through and pulled out anything of value, and all you're getting is junk wax era commons. That's going to happen a lot. And then you might end up boxing up cards in like a flat rate box or something like that and sending them off and selling a box full of commons for $10 or something. But there's also possibilities of finding bulk deals, having a sense, you know, looking through enough of the cards where you get a sense of what the value might be for the whole thing, and being able to offer a much smaller percentage. You know, if you're buying a single individual card and its comp is $100, you know, maybe you'll be able to get it for some lower than comp value. You know, maybe depending on the seller or whatever, maybe you can. But if you're buying a bulk, the seller's expecting to sell it a lot less. The buyer's expecting to buy it a lot less. That's just part of the expectation for bulk. Even for anything, not just for sports cards. If you buy something in bulk from the factory itself or whatever, that's the reason Costco's business model works. You know, you're buying larger amounts of things and then it makes it cheaper because you're buying it in bulk. I mean, it's the same with sports cards. If you're buying somebody's collection of several 100,000 cards or something, they're not going to expect to get $1 per card. They're not going to expect to sell 100,000 cards for $100,000. That would be insane. Nobody would pay $100,000 for 100,000 cards if it was just a bunch of random stuff. People are going to expect to pay a very small fraction of that. And then if you're thoughtful about how you sell it, you can make some good money on it. The challenge with it is if you really want to do the big bulk stuff, it's going to take a lot of time. That's one thing. I bought a collection of cards, like 60,000 cards not too long ago. and I can make some money on it. I will make some money on it. I've been selling a little bit here and there. I pulled out a bunch of stuff for like dollar boxes if I ever get to have a table at a card show or something. Like, I'll make money on it. That's not the question, but the question is more about, like, is it worth the amount of time that you put into it? Because buying bulk does require a lot of time. Just simply looking through, in my case, it was 60,000 cards. Just simply looking through the 60,000 cards takes forever. I haven't finished. I bought it a long time ago, and most of the boxes are still sitting out there in the garage, like, waiting for me to continue to look through them. I'm very likely going to end up just probably selling the entire thing that I bought, maybe just make a tiny bit of money. I think I only bought 60,000 cards for like $250. So I think even if I just take the exact same cards and just say, I don't want to sell this whole thing for $500, it's still a pretty good deal for just $500 for 60,000 cards. Somebody might come along and buy it. But I started going through the boxes and I realized that this is taking so long. I'm not trying to make a full-time job out of the hobby. If you're trying to make a full-time job out of the hobby, this kind of bulk thing is one of the options, one of the paths that you're probably going to end up thinking about pursuing. But if you're just doing the hobby in some spare time here and there, this is probably not the best approach just because of the amount of time it takes. But you can definitely make money in it. So that's another one. The third one is a fun one. You're not going to be able to make a full-time income out of this, but it's a way to make a little bit of money, and it's just a lot of fun. And that is digging through dollar boxes at sports card shows, maybe at sports card shops if you have some good ones in your town. I can't do that in my town. The dollar boxes at sports card shops in my town are full of like commons, and they're not fun to look through. But at sports card shows, sometimes you can find some really good deals. I found lots of cards where if I buy a bulk load, instead of paying $1 per card, maybe I end up paying 80 cents per card, and there might be a bunch of cards in there that I can end up selling for $5, $6, $7. Some that maybe I just end up selling for $1 because I miscalculated, or it was, I wasn't quite right about it or whatever. But you can make money. It's not hard to make some money doing that. Again, you're not gonna, like, if you actually were to think about it, like calculating it in like an hourly wage or something, you might be better off going to Taco Bell and working there or something. I don't really know. I mean, you could make more than that, but it's a fun way. It's a fun way of kind of just seeing what's possible, treasure hunting, like I oftentimes enjoy even just thrift store shopping. It's the same kind of idea as dollar box hunting. It's like you're just going in there, you have no idea what's there. It's fun. The search is fun. Maybe you find stuff, maybe you don't, but even if you don't, and even if you make no money at all, the process itself was enjoyable. In fact, that's one of the things, like for myself, as I'm not trying to make a full-time income in the hobby, I'm trying to find ways like that I can make a little bit here and there, but it's not just about the money. It's the process itself was enjoyable. Going to a sports card show is a good way to connect with other collectors. It's a good way to just, be part of the vibe. It can be fun, depending on the show, depending on the people you meet, but there's some good people wherever. That's one of my favorite ways. So that's the third one. Now the fourth one, and I'm gonna put a caveat on this one because I've made videos about how you should not do this one too much, but that is grading cards for resale. There are ways absolutely to make money buying raw cards, grading them, and selling them. But you have to be more and more careful than ever before. I made a video recently talking about how the value of a PSA 9 and a raw card has shrunk to almost non-existence at this point. At this point, even if you get all PSA 9s, you will not be able to make back your grading fee. So this is a tougher one. It wasn't too long ago where this was a common strategy for people to be able to make money, was to grade their way out of it. That's even the phrase and the terminology that was used in the hobby was grade your way out of, you buy a box of cards and you can make your money back if you can grade your way out. It's possible. It's just much harder. The number of cards being graded, PSA is grading 1 million cards a month. So you have to be very picky on the kinds of cards you send in, or else you're only going to end up being able to sell a lot of these PSA 9s for raw prices or less sometimes. A PSA 10 is a PSA 10. A raw has the potential of a PSA 10. A PSA 9 is a PSA 9. It's not a PSA 10. So a raw sometimes is more valuable than, I made a whole video about that. So a raw it may even end up being that a raw ends up selling for higher than a PSA 9, which is absolutely hilarious. So you do have to be careful. There's also a certain amount of arbitrariness when you're grading where, you might think something's absolutely going to get a PSA 10 and it ends up getting a PSA 8, a PSA 9, and you don't know why. That happens a lot too. You can get better. Some people are able to do something where the cards that they send in, they'll have a 60%, 70% gem rate. They've gotten really good at that, but you can't guarantee that. Even if you feel like you've gotten better at that, their standards could change. The grader that you get could be different. So there's a certain not reliability with that. So you do have to be careful. That being said, there are cards and there are spaces where finding the right type of card to flip to grade and then sell as a graded card, it is possible to make money. You just have to be really thoughtful. And I think that comes to the point, the most important point of all of this is if you want to make money in the hobby, you have to have a clear strategy. You have to have thoughtfulness in how you're doing it, and you have to approach it in a learning mode. I mean, if any of these different ways can make you money or they can lose you money, but it depends on how you're approaching it and if you're trying to learn what are the reliable elements as you go along, because things change. The market changes from month to month, every 3 months or every 6 months. You can see really big changes happening. The types of things that are doing well and the types of things that aren't doing well does change. It morphs and it changes, and the conversations around things change, and the hype around things change, and the psychology of the collector changes. Sometimes it's a de-evolution and sometimes it's an evolution. Sometimes there's new people coming into the hobby that change it. Sometimes the old guard, the people who have been around, they're making certain decisions collectively that are changing the market. Like, the forces that change the market value of sports cards are varied. They're all over the place. So you can't always just rely on your past knowledge. You have to be constantly learning as you're going along, which actually for me is part of the reason I enjoy the journey, because I feel like that process of learning makes it more dynamic, makes it more fun. I don't think I would be involved in the hobby so much if I wasn't learning stuff. It's half the reason I enjoy the process. So I think that's the key to underlying all of these ways to make money in the hobby is if you have a strategy, you have thoughtfulness in how you're approaching that strategy, you're trying to understand the bigger picture of that strategy, and you're learning as you go to make adjustments and shift as you go forward. That's the key. And also figuring out like how much time you want to spend in this space, you know, because the more time you spend, the more potential you have for money. But at the same time, like, is that priority for you? So anyway, that's it for this video. I hope it was useful in some way or another. I will see you in the next one. Peace.